You are in the jungle. I'm Matt Edwards. Thank you very much for joining me. It's week 5 already, man. We are getting into it. It's October. It's time to separate the good from the bad. The Bengals can continue this climb. They're 1-3, but if they get a win this week, Baltimore at 2-2, those two top dogs in the AFC North end up going to 2-3. That kind of settles things a little bit. You feel better all of a sudden, despite still having a losing record. Things will seem like they're really trending in the right direction. We're going to get into how the Bengals can win this game, or at least how I think the Bengals need to win this game, the best way for them to win this game, what gives them the best opportunity. I've got that for you. The Bengals getting some defensive linemen back. We'll talk about that. Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson, they don't really face off as often as you might think. We've got the numbers on when they actually do. Both of them dinged up a little more than either team would hope for. So we'll get into that. But let's start with this. Let's get into the big feast, the big meal, the main entree. And that's this. I was thinking about, isn't it weird that even though Patrick Mahomes does not look as sharp out of the gate, and maybe it's the whole Chiefs offense, but of course it falls on the quarterback because that's just the way it works when the quarterback gets too much credit when they shouldn't, and they don't get enough credit when maybe they should. At any rate, the one offense that the Bengals defense has looked really good against this year is Kansas City's. They went into Kansas City and held the Chiefs to 19 points. Now, I know if you look at the box score, it'll say the Chiefs scored 26. Well, there was a scoop and score fumble that they scored on defense. They went into Kansas City and held the Chiefs to 19 points on offense. Kind of weird, right? Weird that Jacoby Brissett and the Patriots were able to put up 26. The next week, of course, Jaden Daniels, they're just a juggernaut right now. What they're doing on offense is going at a historical pace. So you kind of cross that one out a little bit. Isn't it weird? And then, of course, the Panthers score 24, which is fine. You can deal with that. Isn't it a little unusual that the one offense that you say, wow, the Bengals looked really sharp against this year, it was Patrick Mahomes, the two-time defending Super Bowl champs in Kansas City? And I thought to myself, why is that? And it kind of occurred to me like, and I'm sure other people have said and thought this, Lou knows Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. He's played them enough at this point. He knows what they're going to do. You look at the other teams he's played. Week 1, Patriots. Jacoby Brissett, new guy, new coaching staff. Maybe didn't know what to expect. His defense couldn't tackle. Week 2, they do well against the Chiefs. Week 3, you got a rookie quarterback, a franchise you only see once every 4 years. You don't know what to expect. New offensive coordinator in Cliff Kingsbury. Probably thrown off a little. Excuse me. And then week 4, Carolina, they played pretty well. 24 given up to Andy Dalton and company. When Lou knows the guys he's playing against, he knows what to do. And that's one thing that has me feeling better this week against Baltimore. There's a ton of things Baltimore can do to punish the Bengals. We know the playmakers they have. My God, they're number 1 in rushing in the league right now. Derrick Henry, we'll get into him in a minute. We all know what Lamar Jackson can do. I think a lot of people thought when Derrick Henry went to Baltimore, he's getting old, a body that big. How long can he keep doing this? Well, I don't know, but the train isn't stopping right now. Derrick Henry is still punishing dudes, and the Bengals without DJ Reader, you're going to have someone step up to be the guy who punishes them back. We'll get into that. But when Lou Anarumo and this defense is familiar with who they're going against, they play pretty well. Let's look at Derrick Henry. Just mentioned him. The last 3 times they've played Henry, wild card game. Titans, they were the number 1 seed that year, number 1 and number 2, one of the two. Bengals go in there, end up going to the AFC Championship. Derrick Henry, who was an MVP candidate that year, 20 carries, 62 yards, 1 touchdown. Bengals shut him down. Absolutely shut him down. The following year in the regular season, the two teams meet again. Derrick Henry, 17 carries for 38 yards, 2.24 yards per carry. They kind of haven't figured it out a little bit. Now, last year, week 4, the Bengals got mauled by Tennessee 27-3, and that one he goes for 22 carries, 122 yards, and a touchdown. There's going to be those kind of games where you can't do much, especially last year, the Bengals like this year, the first quarter of the season were just a mess. But when you look historically at what the Bengals can do on defense against known enemies, against the teams they're used to playing that Lou Anarumo has a good read on, they've played all right. Better than all right a lot of the times, but at worst, all right. And right now, if you can get this defense to be all right, then the whole team is going to be all right. They're going to be better than all right as well. They're going to be pretty dang good. So, kind of thinking, isn't it odd that against Mahomes, they looked really, really sharp? I mean, you go to Kansas City, you hold Mahomes to 19 points on offense. Every defensive coordinator in the last few years and going forward, if you said on Saturday night, hey, you just, snap your fingers like this and they'll only score 19 on you, every single one would take that. So they're going to need to pull out some of that magic against Derrick Henry. The last 2 games, 350 yards and 3 touchdowns. Went for 199 against Buffalo the other night. So, looking good there. Maybe it's the optimist in me trying to figure out, how can the Bengals figure out a way to stop them? And you look and you say, well, they know Lamar Jackson pretty well. And I've said on this podcast, that's why I felt so confident against Washington, is because Jaden Daniels has looked amazing, and I think he's already the second best running quarterback in the league behind Lamar Jackson. I thought, hey, Lou, this team has done a pretty good job of stopping running quarterbacks. Can they do it again? The problem is right now they can't tackle very well. And when you get elusive guys like that, you might want to be able to tackle, and they haven't been able to do that. So they'll work on that. A lot of help coming this week, man. Getting all kinds of defensive line help back. B.J. Hill is going to be back. Myles Murphy is back. McKinley Jackson, the rookie, he's a 4th-round rookie, but he's a guy, and right now pretty much anyone who is they just brought in 34-year-old Lawrence Guy. Anyone they can get back right now is excellent. It sounds like Trey Hendrickson will play too, and that's on top of Chris Jenkins really getting his first full workload last week and playing really well in Carolina. So all of a sudden, you take last week and this week, and you've got Jenkins, Murphy, Hill, and Jackson back in the mix, and there's a good argument to be made right now that Myles Murphy might be your 3rd or 4th best defensive lineman. Trey Hendrickson, obviously, 1. I think you got to put Sheldon Rankins 2. B.J. Hill right there at 3, but I don't think we'd be surprised if it doesn't take Myles Murphy to ascend to that next level. We saw him at the end of last year. We saw him in the preseason dominate players he should have been dominating, but man, do they need help, and just in time with Lamar Jackson and company coming to town. I mean, they spent the last 2 weeks without 3 of their 4 best defensive linemen. So no Myles Murphy, no B.J. Hill, no Sheldon Rankins. Trey Hendrickson seemingly has taken on the load for all those guys. He left last week in Carolina with a neck injury. He was limited in practice. If I had to guess, that guy is a warrior. He's going to play. So that's where we're at. I just keep finding ways to tell myself it's going to be all right on defense, and this time I really do believe it. And I trust in the guys they have over there, and hopefully they prove me right, because you look at what they're doing on offense, pretty good. No coffee for me today, so if I don't sound right, I'll blame that. I'm probably just an idiot, but it could be the lack of caffeine. Look, the Bengals are going to have to step up on defense. Look, let's see here. Ravens have the number 1 rushing offense in the league, 220 yards a game. That's insane. That's second is Green Bay at 175. So they have 45 more yards. Is my math right there? 45 more yards averaging per game than the number 2 team. You go down the list, between 2 and 3, it's 7 yards, 6 yards more. They're averaging 45 more yards per game than the team in second place. Just ridiculous. Flip side of that, Bengals have the 8th worst rushing defense in the league, allowing 145 per game. Thank God those defensive linemen are getting back in the mix. Now, some of that has to do with playing Ramondre Stevenson in week 1 and then Jaden Daniels and company in week 2. But it's not like these guys get any easier. You're just going to add to the mix now probably the best running, there's no probably about it, the best running back quarterback running the ball duo in the NFL. Isn't it wild? They kind of have the old thunder and lightning thing. The Giants used to have that, if you remember back in the late 90s with Tiki Barber and Ron Dane. Ravens kind of have that now with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry. So, you got to tackle. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I talk about all these guys you get back. You just got to, it almost doesn't make sense that a team of there's a lot of veterans on that side of the football. Got to tackle the ball carrier. If they can do that, I think they'll be all right. Speaking of defense, Cam Taylor-Britt had a rough start to the season. If you heard him yesterday, he took full accountability. You had to love what he said in the locker room. My pal Jeremy Rao, Fox 19, tweeted out the video. I put it out on my Twitter. But, I mean, he basically says, yeah, I deserved to get benched last week. I was hurting the team. He took the accountability. He sounded exactly like you'd want him to sound. He said he needs to play within the defense, which makes me wonder if maybe Lou Anarumo and he had a discussion about, maybe he was putting a little too much on him. I don't know. But he sounded just the way you want to sound. I really feel like he's going to bounce back in a big way. I'm a believer in him. So feel good there. It's a feel-good day here on In the Jungle. Glad to have you with us. And, yeah, that's where we're at. There's a lot to like about the direction that the defense is headed in. There's really, you couldn't, after week 3, it was kind of like, they hit rock bottom. You got to go back up from there. But they get some guys back. And, yeah, excited to see how all these guys play. And they've got, somewhat of a rotation now. I mean, it's wild. You're going to have guys like Jay Tuafile and Zach Carter who have been starting at defensive tackle for the last 2 weeks. They might not see the field this week. Maybe they get, 8 or 9 snaps each, if that. But that's just kind of the dire situation the Bengals were in on that defensive front. So they've got their work cut out for them. Ravens with the number 1 rushing offense in the league. So here's what I think you do on that defensive line. I mentioned at the top, here's how the Bengals can win. We talk about this every week if you're playing Baltimore, but you contain Lamar, you contain Derrick Henry. You don't let them go for the big plays. Easier said than done. The number 1 thing there is tackle. Keep them inside and tackle. Don't let them get loose. And then the other thing, I think you got to force just 1 turnover. Just give the offense the ball back 1 time in plus territory. Something interesting, when they were playing the Bills on Sunday night, Baltimore, it's almost like if you don't let Lamar make the electric play, it's almost like he gets bored a little bit. It's like he's a thrill junkie. Like he needs to be running an insane route or throwing a ridiculous throw to the back corner of the end zone on the run to have fun. If you just let him sit in the pocket, it's kind of like he's like, all right, I'll throw it over there. Yeah, well, this is toss and catch for me. I think he's that electric of a player that he looks bored to me. I could be totally wrong. But we've seen him throw some bad passes when he just kind of sits back there as a normal quarterback would. So keep him in that pocket. Let him get bored. I really think to be a player like that, you have to be a little bit of a guy who would jump out of an airplane for fun on your 80th birthday. That type. That'll be him one day. I think you let him get bored. When he gets bored, he throws passes that are not that great because I think it's not that entertaining to him. Force 1 turnover off him. Make him get bored. And I think you do that first thing. You contain him. You contain Derrick Henry. As much, I say contain. You're not going to shut him down like you did for, 62 yards a couple years ago. It'd be great if they did. Maybe Lou Anarumo will. But I think with DJ Reader no longer in Cincinnati and with this defensive line, a lot of young guys are going to be relied on. That's going to be easier said than done. But I think he's such a good playmaker. He gets bored and you bore him to death and make him throw an interception. I know that's one of the goofier sounding ways to create turnovers, but I really think it works. I've watched enough of him where I genuinely feel that way. Either he gets bored or he's just not as good of a pocket passer as he's made out to be. So, on defense, contain them, force 1 turnover. Just get one and make them get bored. On offense, are they going to need to score 40 points? Is that what's going to have to happen? I hope not, but if you're a neutral observer and you said that, I would totally understand why. Now, Baltimore has given up 25 or more points in 3 of their 4 games. Interestingly, they gave up 26 to the Raiders and Gardner Minshew. They've played some dudes this year. Open with Mahomes, and then they get the Raiders, who they lose to, and then they had Dak Prescott and Josh Allen. So they've played some quarterbacks, and they've given up 25 or more in 3 of the 4 games, with the outlier being Buffalo, who could only score 10 on them last week. I do like – there's a couple ways to look at it, right? You can say Baltimore's heating up, won in Dallas, mauled the Bills, or you can say, oh, Buffalo just had – couple big back-to-back wins. They're feeling good about themselves. Maybe kick their feet up a little and film this week. Maybe at practice they don't go as hard as they did 0-2. We'll see. I personally am glad they won last week. Now, I don't know that I should say I'm glad, but there's always that NFL. This happens in the NFL. You get a big win, you lollygag around the next week. You take 1 too many victory laps, come out flat. You got to hope that happens. It could go one of two ways. They could stay hot, or they could come out a little flat because they're still patting themselves on the back for the last couple weeks. So the Bengals, on the other hand, have scored 33 against Washington, 34 against Carolina. Offensively, they've got to be feeling great. I think they're getting better every week. They're getting more comfortable. There's a lot of new pieces there. A lot of new pieces. They seem to be figuring it out. I hate to say this, I think they got to score 37 this week. I think that's doable. I think for every turnover the defense creates, you can knock a field goal off that. So if the defense gets one interception, they only have to score 34. I don't know that mathematically that really makes sense. It's just a thing. Again, no coffee today. I can't elaborate on this stuff. So, no wasted possessions. Get the ball to your playmakers. My God, we shouldn't have to wait a whole half of football to get a deep shot to Jamar Chase. Throw him the ball, let him make plays. Get him in open field. We saw it last week. There's that amazing still frame where he's got 5 Carolina defenders around him and he goes and scores a touchdown. Get the ball to your playmakers. Taylor Cornell, whose podcast I appeared on after the Monday night game, the Who Dey Den, he had this stat. Over the last 3 seasons, when Burrow, Chase, and Higgins, Joseph, Jamar, and T play the majority of the snaps in the same game, the Cincinnati Bengals are 13-5. So pretty good, right? With 2 of those losses coming this year, 1 to Washington, or 1 win coming this year and 1 loss. They were 12-4 coming into the season, 13-5 now when those 3 play together. So they're all 3 going to be out there this year. Obviously, the team is a lot more of those guys, but the defense that leaves so many other guys so many opportunities. And we've seen that with T being back on the field. The first 2 games, Jamar was just doubled up so much. What are you going to do? That's why Yoshi has 3 touchdowns on the season already, right? But that's where we're at. That's how I think the Bengals win. Went through it right there. You believe in Lou Anarumo. He's got his guys back. This is a team he knows. This is a quarterback he knows. You got to, from a fan perspective, you have to hope that he still has that magic, the whole Lou Dini magic, right? He knows Lamar Jackson well. Can he cook up something this week in the lab? He knows Derrick Henry well to stop these guys. I think you make the Ravens try to beat you through the air. You try to make Lamar bored. You don't try to win in a track meet because the Bengals offense can hang in a track meet. But if they get stopped for a field goal or a punt here and there, who knows? Who knows if the Ravens don't end up scoring, 41 if it gets to be a shootout. So Lou knows the way against these guys. Can he cook something up to make it work? Make Lamar bored. Make Lamar bored, and on offense, keep ascending that ladder with points. So get the ball in the hands of your playmakers. So those are my things. We got to believe in Lou. Make Lamar bored. Get the ball to your playmakers. Those are the things. Not that difficult. Easier said than done for me in my basement on a podcast as well. Ravens coming off a big win. Let them take a victory lap. Make them feel good. Joe Burrow looked locked in this week. Press conference, eye of the tiger, baby. Ready to go. The Bengals are home underdogs this week. They are getting 2.5 points against Baltimore. I don't bet the line, I guess, if you want my prediction, but you know how that's going to go. So, 2 weeks in a row, week before last, I told you Jamar, take the over on his longest reception. Last week, I told you to take Joseph Burrow on the under on his total passes. We got a hot streak going. That's 2 in a row. This week, I'm going to go to the other team. I'm going to say Lamar, ESPN Bet has him at half of an interception. That's his over-under. So if you take the under and he doesn't throw one, you lose, or you win. If you take the over and he does throw one, you win. You know how it works. Or if you don't, just wait a second and I'll talk about something else. The Bengals picked off Mahomes twice. Again, I think they do really well against these quarterbacks they're used to seeing. So, I shouldn't say really well. They haven't done really well against, they did really well against Mahomes. But when he knows the quarterback, they know how to bait the quarterback. I think Lamar Jackson throws 1 interception. Hopefully he throws 9, but I think he's going to throw at least 1. I think this thing more than likely gets into shootout territory where you probably do need to, first team to 38 wins, that sort of game. And when you're doing that and you're throwing the ball a bunch, I think Lamar Jackson's going to throw an interception. And I don't know. my prediction last week, I predicted the other team to win on purpose, hoping it turns the tide. So I don't want to say that I like the Bengals to win 34-31 this week. I don't want to say that and make things go the way that people listening to this podcast wouldn't want them to go. So let's say, I'm not going to say the Bengals are going to win 34-31. I certainly don't believe that. I believe the Ravens will win, as I predicted the Panthers to do last week, 50-0. So we'll go with that. Out of the jungle, you are now a Commanders fan. If you are also a Bengals fan, Washington has Cleveland on Sunday and Baltimore next week. So the Browns staring at 1-4 in the face. I guess the Bengals in a sense are as well, but that Commanders Express really hot right now. So if they can't do anything, they'll fall to 1-4. The Steelers hosting Dallas on Sunday night. So both teams, I mean, if the Bengals can get a win against Baltimore, I mean, I don't think the Steelers beat Dallas. I don't think the Browns beat the Commanders. Great chance to gain some ground this week if you can get a win at home against Lamar and the Ravens. All right, one for the road, and we're going to wrap this up. Quick episode. Am I talking quicker? I don't know what the deal is. One for the road. Over the last 3 seasons, I mentioned this at the top of the show. We talk so much about Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. Kind of people want to do the head-to-head thing, but if you really look, they don't finish a lot. I shouldn't say they don't finish a lot, but they've only started and finished against each other 3 times. Only 3 times have they started a game and finished it against each other in the last 3 seasons. Is that right? 3 seasons? Yeah. So since Joe's rookie year, we throw that one out. In the 3 following seasons, they've started and finished games against each other 4 times, 3 times. And October 2021, Bengals, remember that big one. The big one. They won 41-17. Since then, the Ravens have won the other 2. In October of 2022, the Ravens won 19-17. And in September of 23, they won 27-4. So when these two actually meet, people like to throw the numbers around, but like last year on Thursday night, Joe went out in the first quarter with the wrist injury. You certainly can't use that one. Lamar's had similar situations. So when these two start and finish, Ravens have won 2 close ones by a combined 5 points, and then the Bengals had that blowout that we all remember as that was right when they were getting hot and made that run to the Super Bowl. So, just as people are out there throwing that around this week, they really haven't played each other that much. And when they have, 2 of the 3 have been close. And the one that hasn't, the Bengals annihilated them. So let's see if the Bengals can even it up at 2-2 when Joe and Lamar face off this week. And yeah, this is one of those games that can kind of, I don't want to say make or break your season on October 6th, but boy, it feels like it can make it. It feels like if you can get a win here and then you go to New York next week to play a bad Giants team, the wheels get turning, don't they? This is just a massive game. Massive, massive game. I'm trying to think of what the other records would be. Steelers could fall to 3-2 this week if they lose to Dallas. But, Pittsburgh at home in primetime, that's no lock either. They have no business winning any of the games they've won, and yet here they are at 3-1. So, hey, man, if the Bengals take care of the businesses in front of them, everything else will fall as it should. The issue is so far taking care of business has not been their way of doing business. But I think they can turn it around. Got guys back. We know how the offensive playing. Maybe they have to score 40. We'll find out. But at any rate, this Sunday, 1 p.m., absolute clash, absolute fireworks. Should be a good time. Hopefully it's a good time. Hopefully the Bengals can pull it out because 1-3 put you in these type of positions early in the season. All right, that's all I got for you today. A little bit of a shorter episode. What are you going to do? You've got places to be anyways. The podcast is called In the Jungle. If you like it, tell a friend about it. Give it a 5-star rating. A couple of you did hit it up on Spotify. I appreciate that. If you're watching YouTube, feel free to subscribe or don't. I'll be okay either way. And appreciate you tuning in. If you want to chime in, I am on the website, Twitter/X, whatever you want to call it, at Matt Edwards, tweeting my little heart away every single day about your Cincinnati Bengals. So that's all I got for you. It's In the Jungle. We will see you again on Sunday night.